Good morning to all my Support Fibromyalgia friends out there. I am Melissa Tolwer. I am the Executive Director of the Support Fibromyalgia Network, and I am a board certified functional medicine health coach. I thought I would jump on here today and talk about something really timely for weather and seasonal changes. So I would love to get a conversation going if you can relate or you have feedback and suggestions for all the fibromyalgia warriors out there. So please like and share this video. Please let all the fibromyalgia warriors out there know about our organization. And I'm going to be doing some more lives. So today, again, it's really timely because the weather has shifted over here where I'm at. It's rainy, it's cold. I can feel it in my legs. It hurts my joints. I'm more tired and brain foggy than ever. So this is the big question, right? Where we talk about, is there any link between fibromyalgia and the weather and seasonal changes? And I know I've heard from a lot of you too. It's like the barometric pressure changes, you get the headaches, you don't feel well. And what do we do? What do we do about it? So if you're out there, definitely, I want to see those comments. I want to see if you notice weather changes and patterns with how you feel with fibromyalgia. And then what do you do to kind of prevent like flare-ups from the weather? Because it is actually commonly talked about. And there are different articles online if you search for different things. I think I even came across another article like best places to live if you have fibromyalgia because of the differences in weather, heat. Some people do okay in heat, some people don't. Some people do okay in cold, some people don't. And what are those differences and those links? And is there anything related to what's going on with fibromyalgia? Maybe the sensitization of it, and even if there is some more small fiber neuropathy involved, like how does that correlate with you? I don't know if anyone notices too when they touch things, because that's something that I get a lot is like, even stuff in the freezer, right? I was just putting away some groceries in the freezer. My hands hurt so much. So this cold shift, and it's like gloomy, it's darker. I don't want to get out of bed, but I even noticed the pain in my legs, especially. It's harder to go to sleep. I feel it in my feet. And I was having this discussion with another advocate the other day, and she's kind of figured out she figured out a way to help her, right? Because I told her that I was like, right now, and don't laugh at me, for anyone out there who is in the Midwest and the other states, right? I'm in California, okay? So the temperature has gone to like 50 degrees. So that is cold. Anything below 70 degrees for me, I am not a happy camper. So I'm like walking around with this big, huge jacket. If you've seen me out there, it's like the big puffy jacket. I don't know if anyone's seen the Snoopy memes where he's like walking around with that big jacket now that it's cold weather. That is totally me. So I was talking with an advocate out there, and she thinks she might have figured out something because she figured out how to help her, right? She was always buried in jackets. So I think we're going to have a discussion with her to maybe see if I can use the similar tools on myself to see if it helps, because I'm always cold. I always have cold hands, feet. And now with the weather shifting and getting really rainy and cold, but then we had a lot of humidity too this year, which I did not do well with. So it's trying to figure out how this like affects our lives. And sometimes when we go to the doctor and being like, I'm just noticing like the storm is rolling in, I'm starting to get massive headaches. And the doctor's like, oh, they'll either say like, I've heard that before with fibromyalgia patients, or they'll be like, oh, that's an old wives' tale. So there's all kinds of different stuff in response, but we know as a community how we feel. And this conversation comes up a lot. And I see people chiming in with the comments too, like, yes, they notice changes. And I've heard this, I've read blogs from some of our fibromyalgia warriors. They're like, they're like the weather channel for how you feel. Like the headache comes in, and it's interesting. They start to notice headache, or they start to get a flare up. And that's when we notice like these storm patterns coming in. It's quite fascinating to me to figure out. And I actually wish that they would do some more research. I pulled up some and I tried to find some research, and I'm going to have to do a better job of digging through the research, but there is like commentary about this quite a bit because weather and fibromyalgia does come up. And I mean, we don't have a ton of specific research on weather in relationship to fibromyalgia symptoms, But there's a few studies, so people are starting to listen to us and starting to figure out, maybe, and I still think, maybe there is something with small fiber neuropathy or changes, but to be honest, they do have some research on weather effects on other pain conditions. So like things like arthritis and migraines, that has been studied for a lot longer. So the connection with migraines or migraine-like headaches and all these patterns, because that's a lot of what I hear. And if you notice that too, like if there's a storm coming in or changes in the barometric pressure and you're getting a lot of headaches, that's very interesting to me. So, this is just something to spark as weather changes over here. And like I said, don't make fun of the California girl too much. But the weather changes and all this humidity we had this year. Oh, I was not having it. I don't do well in humidity. We used to be more dry heat over here. So how it just changes your system and then what you become more sensitive to. Because I noticed when it was higher humidity out in the sun, I felt like I was more sensitive to the sun for some reason. And I had never had that pattern come up before. So I don't know if my nervous system, I'm just becoming more sensitive to heat changes because I've always been with cold hands and feet, like freezing cold hands and feet. And especially when I touch cold items, like I literally wear gloves and my family watches me. If I have to put anything away or shift stuff in the freezer, I have actual gloves on because it hurts and my hands actually go red. Never been fully diagnosed with Raynaud's, but I mean, maybe that's a part of it. And just with the sensitivity to different heat and weather changes or just temperature changes. So I see some people chiming in. Yes, they notice the different temperature changes. And then with seasonal changes, right? So it's come a lot darker. I mean, for some of the states, we're about to fall back eventually in the hour, or you spring forward. I get really thrown off with all of that. And that could also have a factor to do with our circadian rhythms, right? We get the unrefreshed sleep. We're already not, and now we're getting changes to darker earlier, and then it's like as it stays darker through the morning, so maybe it's always like shifting because we have thrown off circadian rhythms if we don't have and kept up with that as we try to improve our sleep hygiene. That could be a factor as well. So I mean, these are all guesses. So if anyone out there has tips though to help other fibromyalgia warriors with this, that would be awesome because it does, like, I guess I'm looking through some of the documentation that there was large internet studies that, about nearly 2,600 people with fibromyalgia had they did look for specific weather related information. And I guess about 80% of those respondents said like weather changes does they see as weather changes an effect on their fibromyalgia. So that's really interesting. And it was one of the top 5 perceived triggers for all of this among like stress, sleeping problems, and strenuous activity. So that there's something here. And I know that we're going to be the detectives when it comes to figuring out this and advocate for ourselves so we can help each other out as a community by responding to this. And if anyone has good tips, because I know when it comes to extreme cold, right? You can add more clothes on. It still doesn't help me much. So it's like, okay, so do I put a heater under my desk? Like all these things to warm up my legs, especially the limbs. Um, it's hard to get moving sometimes already when you're already cold. So they've been doing some internet analysis when it comes to this. So there is a correlation, and they're trying to actually, I'm reading through a Twitter study too. I guess they were trying to figure out like which states. So they found that among like 8 states with the most Twitter posts in the analysis of using like hashtag fibromyalgia, 6 revealed no significant correlation between the weather and symptoms, but then there were others, right? So they found some weak correlations, I guess, between California, and it says here that California, it was humidity that bothered people. New York, it was the wind speed. So that's interesting. So I guess it's just like there's so non-uniform, I guess, patterning when it comes to this. So if you're in Chicago, it gets super, super cold with wind patterns. So it's interesting. I mean, it's fascinating with other things. And, I it can't get ignored, right? Because there is research when it comes to weather and other pain conditions. And there was a 2015 study in the Journal of Rheumatology, which suggested a relationship between humidity and joint pain and osteoarthritis, with humidity in cold weather having a greater impact than in warm weather. And then there's another study that suggested relationships between rheumatoid arthritis, pain, and humidity as well, with some having linked to high barometric pressure. Then a small study in 2011 out of Japan suggested ties between a migraine and a drop in barometric pressure. So they have some information. Again, it's not very specific for fibromyalgia, but we can use that, especially if you have other overlapping conditions. And there's a long list with rheumatology. So, a 2010 rheumatology study found that cold weather was associated with more pain, including chronic widespread pain. Researchers stated that as you expect, winter was the worst season, followed by autumn and spring, and that summer was the best season. Do you agree with that? Does anyone out there find that summer? So I'm seeing some people like, no, not summer. So it seems like spring, maybe when it, I think it just depends, right? With the weather. And the weather has been like really weird lately. So it's just having this open discussion and, what can you do about it? And is there any way to negate this and just, staying cool when it's hot? I found those cooling towels, which I actually tried using. I had never used them before, but I had met people that had them around their neck when they like overheat, or I'd seen those fans that people put around their neck. Because I have a funny story. I was in like a business networking group, and like I said, I was always cold with that big jacket. The air conditioning was blowing on me, and I was just like sitting there freezing with a big old jacket. And another woman, there's a lot of hormone changes. She was loving the air conditioning. She even had one of those fans on her chest to keep her cool. It was hilarious. We were sitting right next to each other, but the differences in how we were affected by the air conditioning and the temperature of the room. It's fascinating to see the differences. And there's all kinds of hormonal changes, thyroid changes that have to be factored in when it comes to figuring this out. So that's why I thought it was interesting. So Judy, thanks. You just said too that summer better over winter. And now, Judy, you live in a more like humid climate. So, like I said, people don't make fun of me with California. We're supposed to be pretty moderate with our temperatures, but things have gotten a little bit way too humid because I think I always check it. Like lately, it's been with above the humidity has like been above 50. So I was like 50% over here. So I was just like, oh, that is not a dry heat anymore. Some other just tips like with the temperature sensitivity, if humidity bothers you, maybe a dehumidifier. I've never tried that before. If anyone out there has, um, please let me know, or what's the best way. Like sometimes I was thinking of putting something in the bathroom. So it's just, this problem is just spent, we haven't spent a lot of time, but I see these conversations. So that's why I wanted to bring it to the table and hear from you and just get so, just chime in and share with other fibromyalgia warriors. Like, how can we help each other when it comes to this? Because we know that we're not alone. We see it, we see the patterns, and there are people that acknowledge it. And has been some research in the overlapping conditions. So, chronic pain, osteoarthritis, arthritis community, migraine community. I'm sure if I dig around more, I'll find some more research for migraines and headache related information as well. But I hope everyone is having a great day. I just wanted to jump on here and do this topic to just ask people, is there a link? Do you notice a link with your fibromyalgia symptoms and weather and seasonal changes? So I hope everyone stays warm out there with this weather pattern coming in, especially in California. Stay warm, stay dry, and hopefully sending you low pain days ahead. Thank you, everyone. I will see you next time. I'm Melissa Toller from the Support Fibromyalgia Network. Hopefully, I have an update for you guys this week too, because I'm a part of a virtual Hill Day, which I will talk about tomorrow. It's not directly related to fibromyalgia, but it's healthcare related. So we're advocating for a lot of acts to the legislation that is all healthcare related. So I'm excited to be a part of that with Patients Rising. I'll be back tomorrow to discuss more about it. Thanks. Bye.